born in Scotland. I come from a close family. I've got two brothers who are also entrepreneurs. So I guess it's sort of in our blood a little bit, I guess. And I was a lawyer, and then opened some cafes with my brother in the late 90s. I ran that for 10 years, and from there had the idea and I guess the concern about the volume of waste we were using as a business, and wanted to do something about it.
And is this cafe Blue Bag, out of curiosity? Is it still
it's
around today, or?
Yeah, it is. It's
okay.
And the guy who ran our kitchen is still running the kitchen with the new owners. So it's a nice story. The business has grown and done really well since we exited.
That's amazing. We actually have a Blue Bag just down the road from our office, so it's doing pretty well these days. I didn't realize you founded it as well before this podcast. That's fantastic.
Is that the one in Collins Street?
Burke Street.
The Collins Street one is that's where the kitchen is, and that's where we started KeepCup's. So we were packing the cups in an upstairs mezzanine of that building in Collins Street for a while.
Amazing. So growing up, did you ever have this inkling that you would ever be an entrepreneur, or did you start with a traditional view on career, and because you did law, so I started with a pretty traditional, at school, my top subjects were art and literature. Like I'm a creative, and I think probably my brothers at heart are the same. We're all creative people, although our family background is not that. I guess my parents encouraged me to do law. Like, you get the marks, do law. Like, why wouldn't you do it? So probably, I guess it's been of benefit in, I guess you learn to structure your thinking, you learn about problem solving, you learn about systems, and often, just saying I was a lawyer, I guess repositions people in your mind as well. That's true. Did you enjoy being in law when you were practicing?
I did not enjoy the degree and sort of went off the rails a bit at uni, but I got a job in a really small law firm in the city, and the partner that I worked with was a really terrific person and a great sort of, I guess, foil to my skills. Like, he was very methodical, could think really clearly, and so I really enjoyed working as a lawyer. Although I must say that, my advice was sort of always, why are you here? Like, it would be so much better to find a commercial solution to this problem rather than, issuing proceedings is often banging your head up against a wall. It's very stressful for all parties. So, I guess I felt my strengths lay elsewhere in more commercial solutions to problems.
So how did you go from that to Blue Bag? What was the lightning rod moment, or the light bulb moment?
There was no light bulb. It was sort of, so my brother Jamie was working in the UK, and he wanted to run a business, I guess. Like, he kept coming up with ideas. He's like, oh, we could run a veterinary supermarket, like you've seen pet food stores. He had all these crazy ideas. And then one day he said, I've seen Pret a Manger in London. And I was like, well, I'm a really good cook and I like people. So, it can't be that hard to run a, cafe business. Turned out it was quite hard. So it was nothing more than that, really. And I guess we were always, we were obsessed by the recipes for the sandwiches, the branding of it, what the stores would look like, and not really on the P&L and the back end of that held little interest. But we did it, we made it. And I think that people who do well in a lot of food businesses, so much of it is cleaning and hygiene and processes, which is probably was neither of our real strengths.
Oh my gosh. So what was a common misconception you think people have when they want to start a cafe business? Expectations versus reality.
Oh, I think it's exactly the thing I thought. I like people, and I'll be good with the customers and good with the relationships, and I'm a good cook. But having to cook every day and build systems around cooking, and the staff that you get in, often it's not their first career choice. They're there to earn revenue. It's not a vocation. So all those things make it quite tricky. And I mean, if you get it wrong, you can kill someone.
Especially,
Sorry.
After you.
I was just going to say, because we had a catering business that was part of Blue Bag, and if you're 5 minutes late with the catering, like they want to kill you. Like, we wanted the sandwiches there at 1, you're 5 minutes late. Whereas if you're 5 minutes late with the KeepCup's, no one cares. So it's quite a high pressure environment as well. There's only one hour for lunch, that coffee rush in the morning. If you miss it, you've lost your revenue for the day.
Is there any particular thing you're especially proud of having run Blue Bag for over 10 years, I think, if I get my numbers right?
I was always really proud of the food that we produced, and like at one point we had these fresh juice bars, and we'd cut up the fruit, and we'd have the music cranking, we'd have queues like running down the road to come in and get a juice, and we came up with all these crazy names. And I don't know, I love the creative part of it, and and that whole thing of engaging people in what you were doing and people loving what you did. That's quite intoxicating.
So when did the idea for KeepCup first come up in your head?
So probably it was like 2006, 2007. It was quite a while before we did anything, but you're deep in running a business, which consumes 95% of your brain space. And I just saw the volume of packaging we were going through as a business and thought, this is crazy. And if you multiply that out across all the businesses in Australia, like the volume of waste that we're going through is just untenable. And then looked around at how we could have something reusable in the stores, because everything was on open refrigerated shelving and you just came in and grabbed a sandwich. So it was a lot of single-use packaging. And I went and looked at, I don't know if they don't exist anymore, but there was Swords Wine, where they used to refill the wine bottles at the Victoria Market.
Oh.
And they would wash the bottles, so you just kept reusing the same bottle. So I looked at what they did. We looked at having salad containers, but it was all a bit tricky. And then we thought, well, coffee is such high volume. It seems like and so we just went to buy a reusable cup to sell it in the store, and then went down to Myer, and there were all these giant thermoses. They didn't fit under the group heads. You couldn't wash them. You couldn't clean them. They didn't go in the microwave, didn't go in the dishwasher. And thought, well, maybe we'll make our own. But all the time when we were doing this process, like always in the back of my mind is someone must already have done this. It's such an obvious idea.
And no one did it.
And no one had done it. Yeah.
That's incredible, because KeepCup right now is, synonymous with reusable cups. I mean, I have a KeepCup. You definitely have a KeepCup. And, a lot of people out there have KeepCups. So that's incredible that no one thought of the idea. Why do you think that was the case?
I don't think people understood that disposable cups weren't recyclable, and often they still do not 10 years later. I don't think they understood people are only just awakening to the volume of waste we're going through as a global community and how it's going to kill us. And I think that, but the thing is, when we launched KeepCup, I still remember being at the first design market in Fed Square, and people coming up going, this was my idea. I was thinking of this. So even though we were the first to do it, I think we were the first of a big group of people who were, concerned about the problem at the same time.
So after you had this idea, what was the product design and testing like? If you could just take us through those early days.
So, it was myself and my brother, Jamie Forsyth. And so we would be discussing, how we would do it and what it would be like. And initially we thought of doing it more like a CHEP pallet scheme, where it would be a loan scheme, but we didn't think that would work. We didn't think the community was ready for that sort of volume of take up of reuse. So again, we're thinking, why hasn't someone done this before? Are we missing something? Because this seems like an obvious solution to a big problem. Will people reuse it? Like, is this something other people are concerned about like we were? So we couldn't use any of the thermoses that were on the market. So we got a Decor soup mug, and we gave people a 50-cent discount if they returned and reused. We sold it for $6, and we had 15% of our customers in the winter of 2007 use it for soup. And it made us more money, because the disposable packaging cost us 75 cents and we were giving a 50-cent discount. So we made 20, we not, we didn't expend 25 cents for every, we made an extra 25 cents on every product. So that was good. Then we thought, and we'd done all the design of stuff in-house and done these pretty wacky, we'd done all the design in-house. So then we thought, well, if we're going to do this, we need to engage industrial designers. So we went in with a picture and thought, we wanted, I think one of our instincts and something that proved successful was we made it look a bit like a disposable cup. So we didn't want it to be conspicuous that you were using a reusable. We wanted you just to better fit in. So we designed it to have the press-on lid. It was fitted under the group head. So we really designed it so you could make a great coffee in the product, which people often have missed. So then we chose, we wanted to use local manufacture. So we went around to different manufacturers, and then one guy said to me, look, this is just a plastic cup. What on earth are you thinking? And he said, there's a lot of great designs happen. People make great products, but if they can't sell them, then don't worry about it. There's heaps of better products than yours that are just sitting in patent offices or. So initially I was a bit upset about that opinion, but because we had all the catering business through Blue Bag, myself and my brother, we called like hundreds of companies and pitched the idea of KeepCup's. So through that, we refined our idea. We understood who the buyer was going to be. So initially thought it would be sustainability department, but the sustainability department often didn't exist. And if it did, it had no money, had no budget. So then we went through to marketing and found it was marketing who would have the budget to buy. And then we pitched it to lots of companies, and National Australia Bank, we pitched it to their sustainability team, and they were moving to a new 6-star green building in the Docklands. And at the time, they'd done all this stuff in terms of their infrastructure around the building. It was using grey water, it had solar on the roof, but they were still using disposable cups inside the office. And so what we were saying is there's a disconnect here. If you're not doing it all the way through and your staff are still using something single use, you're not really embedding that message of 6-star green building. So they purchased 5,500 off the prototype.
Wow.
And off we went from there. So yeah.
So that was the real inflection point where you kind of went, this is going to really take off.
Sort of. I think we still didn't realize, it was still pretty naive about the potential of the business and what it could do. But yeah, it was certainly, it was enormously confidence boosting and paid for the tooling, really.
So what was that inflection point where you decided to step away from Blue Bag to then commit 100% of your time to KeepCup?
Oh, look, I was ready to get rid of Blue Bag as soon as I could. It's hard work working in a kitchen, and you got to get up really early. And, the minute KeepCup took off, I was like, see you later.
Oh, that's incredible. So in terms of production, you mentioned that you found local manufacturers. I presume doing production locally was a more expensive endeavor than going overseas. Was that ever up for discussion, or were you always going to be Australia focused?
One, I guess we knew that potentially the business could be, it was a global problem. So the business potential was always global, but it was my strong view that because we were solving it was a sustainability problem, an impact problem, that if we're going to make a product for the Australian market, we should make it in Australia. Like, how are you, if you're importing it from China or importing it from another country, are you part of the problem or part of the solution? So I guess it was wanting to be really true to the purpose of the business that made that decision sort of, there was no other option really.
That's a fantastic statement. And could you talk us through what it was like growing the company as well? At first, it was you and your brother, Jamie. I presume at some point you had to bring in more people as the company scaled. What was that experience like for you as a CEO, starting from a 2-person co-founded company all the way to the company that you are today?
It's tough. It's super tough. Yeah. I mean, finding the right people, having confidence in yourself to lead the company, knowing the right way to grow, what skills you need, like all those things. We're about to launch a B2B website, which has been in progress for like 3 years. Like, wow. How come this has taken so long? But then I look back on last year, and part of last year was just finding the right people to help, do that work and grow the business. Like, things take a lot longer than you think they're going to take. And then just understanding what you need takes a long time too. So, yeah, it's.
Well, what do you think was the biggest challenge in those early days for KeepCup? Did you ever raise capital? Was capital ever an issue for you, or?
No, I mean, yeah, we had a small loan when we started. We used a lot of the cash flow from Blue Bag to fund what we're doing, and then we've just always grown organically. So
That's
we've
fantastic.
never taken capital.
And will you ever consider taking capital, or is that completely out the table for you?
I'm very naive. I'm not really sure what we would need it for. Like, we make a profit, and what would we use that capital for? I don't know. I always feel like, and it's probably naive, but when you take on capital, you're taking on a boss, and that boss is someone who wants to make money off the money you've given them, and may drive you to make decisions that maybe aren't true to your values and what you set out to do. So I've been, I guess, very cautious about that, and no one's offered any. So yeah.
Well, that's actually really interesting, because a lot of our listeners on the podcast are people who are thinking of starting, startup companies. And, these days, the metric by which you judge success for a startup is how much capital you've raised. And you've taken a different approach to that.
I don't understand that, because to me, and I know from the experience that, look, if you're building some sort of app where you need massive amounts of people that are paying $1 to make it, it might make sense. But if you're running a business that, is money in, goods out, if you're not making a profit on off a small base, if you you're just going to multiply the problem. Like, as you grow, if the business isn't profitable, often you're just multiplying the problem that you've got. If the model doesn't work, the model's not going to work at scale either for some businesses. So I think that whole Silicon Valley thing has sort of skewed people's reality about how things, if you're building an IT product, you do need scale to grow and make the thing work. But in a traditional business where it's a product or a service, if the model doesn't work at the outset, it mightn't work when you scale it either.
Yeah, if it's not going to be positive in margin at the start, it's hard to get it to scale when you grow to become an even bigger company. So that's really great advice, actually. Talking about your international growth, you're now in multiple different geographies. Melbourne as a city itself is quite a progressive city, where it might be easier to persuade people to switch to reusable cups, because Melbourne's always had that socially conscious culture embedded within the city. Did you notice a difference in that when you scaled to different cities and countries?
Yes, so totally. So we in the UK, we sort of came in at ground zero of the independent coffee scene. So that, in Australia, there's 80% independents, 20% chains. In the UK, it was the opposite. So getting a foothold, you can always get a foothold in the independent scene, because you've got people who are wanting to, make that difference. Whereas, so it was tougher for that reason in the UK. And in the US, one of the things that made KeepCup's successful was that in Australia, cafes only sold food and coffee, and we gave them another revenue stream. So they were selling KeepCup's, and it was very clear that we were an alternative to single-use cups. Whereas in America, they considered it, like, they've had merchandise for years. Think of Starbucks. You go and there's a wall of reusable cups and thermoses. So they consider it branding and merchandise. So we go in and say we want to be an alternative for single-use cups, and they're like, yeah, you're merch. And we're like, no, we're not merch. We're trying to be something else. So, but I don't know. I've spoken to my dad about this, and he's always like, if you had have moved to LA and been in LA and grown the business in LA, it would have been bigger there. Like, the presence of the founder and the person who's got the passion for driving the change makes such a difference. So it is Melbourne with its coffee culture and its independent coffee scene, but it's also, the founder and where they are will drives it as well.
And now that you've got operations in multiple different countries. How hard is it running an international business? You mentioned the founder being important. Do you travel really often as well? Pre-COVID-19, of course.
Yeah, so I did travel quite a bit, and it is hard. Yeah, it takes its toll. Yeah, it's tough. We did a lot, like in the early days, we did a lot of trade shows. So we were at a lot of coffee shows, a lot of retail shows, really just trying to grow the brand and the business and find distributors. So yeah, it's tough, but in the early days, it's super exciting. Like it's thrilling to, travel the world and, meet people and all that stuff. But yeah, it gets tougher as you get older.
Well, how hard has it been when, for you to pass on or hand over different parts of the business to other people? Like, presumably you've had to hire a head of US or head of UK. KeepCup really is your baby. I mean, every founder feels like the company's their baby. What was it like for you just trusting the reins of it to someone else in a different geography?
It's hard, but it's hard and it's not, because when you get someone who does a good job and you have a great commercial relationship with them and you can talk about the issues of the business, it's easy. It's hard when you sort of don't have the trust in their capability or capacity. And when you do, it's easy.
So what do you look for in someone when you want to bring them onto the KeepCup team?
I look for someone who's I guess the predisposition. I listened to a podcast the other day where a woman was saying that businesses are as different as people are. And I was like, I'd never thought of that before, that of course a business has its own personality and its own predisposition. So I'm a real doer. So I look for people who are, very action oriented in how they approach things. I think they need to have sustainability needs to be fundamental to how they operate. Like it's baked into the business. So if you're not thinking in those terms, you're going to be out of step with how we think. But you also need to be commercial, and be able to make good commercial decisions that, you're always weighing up things and being able to make good decisions on the fly, particularly in those overseas hubs where they need to weigh up those things and can't really bounce things off me. That's really important.
Sorry, as a CEO, what do you define as culture? Everyone has a different definition of culture within a company. What is KeepCup's culture?
I'm not sure. I think it's quite creative. I think it's quite can-do. I think we think on our feet. I think we're all pretty passionate about behaviour change and systems change and how we drive that. And I think there's always been a real attention to the quality of the product and the integrity of the product. We're really proud of the products that we produce, the relationships we have with our suppliers, the relationships we have with our customers. Like that's really important to us. So, yeah.
And as a company leader, and you personally, actually, do you think your own leadership style has changed over the past 12 years through these different phases in KeepCup's life?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, sort of. It's probably I've just grown more confident and I guess more. This is how, I think it's more grown more confident, but also understood what my leadership style is, understood what my strengths and weaknesses are, whereas I didn't before. So knowing that this is how I operate, and so, for example, I operate on a pretty big picture level. So I need people in my team, in the leadership team, who are very detail oriented, who can then, action those things in a detailed way, whereas I can't do that. So it's being able to build a team around you that is a foil to your strengths and weaknesses, and also gives them ownership and a bit of independence in what they're doing as well.
It's empowerment for your team as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I want to talk next about competition, because KeepCup is a brand that's so strong that it's become synonymous for reusable cups globally. But since then, obviously, there have been a lot of competitors and, for lack of a better term, copycats coming up. So how do you stay competitive in this environment?
Well, that's a good question. So I guess, if you sort of scratch the sustainability surface of me, there is someone deeply competitive underneath. So I think in order to stay in, you have to be competitive. Like, that has to interest you. So I think that, and I think just for KeepCup, I think having that integrity and that relationship to specialty coffee, and having designed a product that really does work, not, it's a cup that people continue to use because it works for them. And that's not a fluke. That's baked into the design of the product. It's baked into the supply chain. It's baked into how we talk to customers. So I guess it's distinctiveness and differentiation. And those things are, when we first started, it was just us against the single-use cup. And now we've had all these competitors come on board, so then you become just another product company. And I think we're now looking to transform again and go, well, how can we form an alliance with these competitors and drive out single use? Like, that's the aim. That's the real aim of the game. Like, we want to end single use convenience packaging. So how do we join forces to make that happen, is, I guess, one of the things we're thinking about now.
So it goes back to the mission of the company, really, and
absolutely
growing the pie so everyone gets a bigger slice.
Yeah.
Fantastic. From our research, we know that compostables is a particularly annoying word for you. Why is that the case?
Because it's greenwash. It's just total greenwash. It's that, then in order for these cups to be compostable, they have to go into commercial composting facilities, and those commercial composting facilities are really important to create compost to enrich soil so that we continue to have topsoil on the planet. And if you're filling it with cardboard and either vegetable-based plastic, you're degrading the value of the compost. So you're not actually solving the problem. You're just swapping out the material. So you're still cutting down trees. You're still using a product once and wasting resources to drink a coffee. So it's just kicking the can down the road. It's not solving the problem.
And you think that reusable cups are a great way to solve that problem?
Well, I think not only reusable everything. Like, people need to reduce the amount of, we need to all reduce the amount of stuff we're using and reuse what we've got. So that's going to happen one way or the other. It's just what the earth looks like when we've finally done it is the real question.
And KeepCup's been a B Corp since 2014 as part of that mission. So how does that B Corp certification help your business?
So when we started, people would say, are you organic? Are you fair trade? Like, what are you? If you're good, how are you good? Why are you good? And I think B Corp for us gave us that independent, it's a heavily audited certification that says that you are, you're good to your employees, you're good to your customers, you look after your community, and you have a positive impact on the environment. So it was just a way of verifying that we walk our talk.
And was the B Corp certification one of the reasons that KeepCup was successful in getting into Whole Foods in the US, according to our, again, research, thanks to our producer, Joe?
Yes, that's
What was
true.
the story there?
So, I think they were looking at other reusable cups, and then the fact that we were a B Corp was the clincher on the deal to get into Whole Foods.
Wow. And no one else was B Corp certified among that competitor base?
Not at the time.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Like, that was 2015.
Wow. So you've really pioneered the way or led the way in that sustainability movement. Going back to the early days, you mentioned that NAB was one of your first customers, and it was part of the sustainability team. Over the years, have you seen a change in the attitude of business leaders in corporate Australia towards sustainability and charitable causes?
Probably. Not as much as I would hope, though.
And what do you think corporate Australia needs to do to really change that?
Look, there's lots of issues. Well, divesting of fossil fuels and digging stuff out of the ground is really important, but it's going to be a challenge when our other biggest industries are education, service, and tourism, which have just been absolutely smashed through this pandemic. I mean, there's some layered things. So there's this whole idea that you have one hand to make money and the other hand to then create a charity. Like, that is fundamentally flawed in the fact that you have to wrap those things together. If your business isn't contributing positively to a better world, you need to pivot your business like right now. So that's an issue. I think another challenge has been the way sustainability has been sort of sidelined as a department, and it often sits in the back end of a business in its operations, and there's all these certifications and boxes to tick, instead of being out the front of the business, really driving its strategy and how it's in the marketplace. I mean, globally, consumers get blamed, that people want convenience, but I think if people really knew the price we were paying for convenience, they wouldn't want it at all. So there's lots of changes need to happen pretty damn fast.
You seem pretty disappointed by by the length of time it takes for businesses to adapt to this new world of sustainability or the need for sustainability.
I mean, I can get out. So in 2010, we looked at what Starbucks was doing, and they're like, we have a claim to have reuse rates at 5% by 2015, and they were at 1.89% in 2010. And I was like, oh wow, like they're on this, they're really serious about getting reuse on the agenda at Starbucks. At the time, all their stores, if you want to have a coffee inside Starbucks, you're having it in a disposable cup. So overnight, if they just put ceramics and reusable cups into their stores, they could get to 25% reuse rates. But 10 years later, they're still nowhere near it. And now they're peddling out some cup that they say is made from old disposable cups, like it's recycled, but it's only 30% of the whole contents of the cup. The rest of it's all virgin plastic. And so they have no intention of changing their business model. Like 10 years later, like what? So I'm I guess, you go in with good faith, and 10 years later, you see that people aren't really genuine about making the change. They're going to have to be dragged by consumers demanding the change. It's pretty disappointing, especially when you see, we get told all about recycling, and it's only now, I mean, even 10 years, we were pushing recycling as well, but 10 years later, you realize that only 9% of all the plastic ever produced ever in the world has been recycled.
Wow.
Like, so the whole thing is, recycling is never going to be the answer. And yet governments are still pushing that as a solution to the problem, and it's not. So
one of the biggest things to happen for sustainability in Australia was the banning of single-use plastics. And I know you publicly supported a bill to achieve that. What do you think needs to happen for more of that to occur, for more successes like that to occur?
Well, so I guess it all moves around this circular economy movement. So the idea that instead of take, make, waste, that we leave products in play for as long as we possibly can, and then downcycle them or dispose of them. But in order for a circular economy to work in Australia, you need a circle and you need an economy. And Australia manufactures barely anything. So how do you get that circle going if we're not making the stuff that we need for our own community to keep that going? But on the other hand, that is an answer to the problem of unemployment that is going to happen all over the world now. Like, Australia's going to be at 13%. I would suggest it's probably going to be higher than that. But if you're washing and reusing and repairing, you push all the jobs back down into local communities, and you can really drive change. Whereas if you're just some factory in, I don't know, Indonesia pumping out disposable cups, all the money's going to the guy who owns the company. None of it gets pushed back into community. So it's change. We have to change the economics.
You seem really vocal about social issues. Where does this passion come from?
I don't know. Just walking with my son this morning down the Merry Creek, and it's full of rubbish. Like, there's just rubbish. There's foam in the water from God knows what's been. Just like, I don't know. Could be so much, and it could be beautiful. So I guess the passion is from the beauty I see that could be there.
That's crazy. Thanks for being so vocal. I think there aren't many business leaders out there who really take the time to advocate for these things. So I think you're unique in that sense.
Well, I hope not. I hope I'm common as.
Fingers crossed one day. How do you find your voice to speak so publicly about these issues? Was it always, something that you envisioned yourself leading the charge on?
No. I'd just like it to happen, but if it's not going to happen, like, I don't know, it's for a long time, just carrying a Keep Cup was enough. You'd see someone in the street with one, you'd give them a nod, and it was a protest in itself, but it's not now, and we need to go a lot harder and a lot faster to make the change we need to make.
Yeah.
Like bushfire season's about to be on Australia again, and what's happened, what's been done.
So I want to move on to a somewhat related topic. COVID-19, obviously the topic on everyone's minds. Well, firstly, how has COVID-19 been for you and your team? Everyone doing okay?
Yes, everyone's doing, in terms of health and well-being, everyone is good. Yeah.
Fantastic. So early on in COVID-19, some cafes actually temporarily stopped accepting reusable cups.
Yep.
How do you manage that, and what do you think are the implications of that?
So that happened, and it swept through the world when Starbucks banned them, and the world pretty much followed. So we spent a lot of time talking about how we were going to talk about that, and how the logic of that was the same as the logic of people saying 10 years ago that that reusables had lesser impact. The disposable cups had less impact than reusables. We had to confront that 10 years ago. So it was like Groundhog Day in terms of the myth making around that. We went out with some communication where we did get a bit of criticism about that we weren't really considering people's health, and also the health of frontline workers serving coffee. But at the same time, we knew that the plastics lobby was in there trying to repeal environmental legislation, trying to repeal single-use bans that were happening in America. So, yeah, it's been a difficult time. I think there's 100 scientists went out in The Guardian a couple of months ago and said it makes no difference. Like, reuse is just as important as, to continue, that is really important, especially because of the avalanche of plastic that's coming from all the PPE equipment. So I think it's changing, but people are cautious, and also you've got to understand, if you're the person making the coffee on the coffee machine, it's difficult to get the right information, and of course their health is the first priority. So it's been a challenging time.
What do you think will happen with the reusable cup movement coming out of COVID-19? People saying, for example, travel is going to take years to recover. Do you think that's the case with the reusable cup industry as well? Or do you think it's going to revert back to where it was?
Well, I think it's not so much the reusable cup industry, it's the cafe industry.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to that? Like, that's a tough industry to be in on a good day, and to be in it now must be just incredibly difficult. So, I don't think a lot of cafes won't survive this time. What's going to happen to the world of work? Like, if people are continuing to work from home, what happens to that cafe industry? What even happens to the culture of coffee in a way? So, in some ways, I used to say that people used to go out for a cigarette break in the 80s and 90s, and then coffee sort of became that substitute pause. And if people are working from home, I'm not drinking as much coffee as I used to working from home. So what happens to that whole industry is in for a shift as well. And maybe it will be that people will, sit down and have their coffee in-house or at home, and, there'll be just less takeaway culture, full stop, which in my view would be a great result.
So what does KeepCup's roadmap out of COVID-19 look like?
Oh, we don't have a roadmap. No, we've got a few things going on. So we're I guess we're really focusing on making sure our e-commerce offer is sound and is both for B2C and B2B. We've got some other products in development which will come out early next year. But I think, there's I think having the quality of product we do and the integrity of mission that we do and the supply chain that we do, you know, the business is going to look different, but it'll still be there. And I think we see our role as to be increasingly vocal around the change that we'd like to see in the world, that it no longer wants, needs or uses disposable cups, and then extending that to all convenience packaging.
That's fantastic. And I'm conscious of time, so I just have one last question for you before we wrap this up.
Sure.
What does the future of KeepCup look like? And I guess wrapped up in that question is any hints on new products coming out soon?
Well, we've always wanted to do products that I guess have their own IP. Like IP's been a big thing to protect us from our competitor set. So yeah, we've got some exciting products that I guess are still in that replacing single-use products. So yeah, it's
a long journey ahead, and there's plenty of other areas to improve on in terms of sustainability. So
for sure.
Amazing. Abigail, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Pleasure.
And everyone out there, get yourself a Keep Cup. It goes a long way. So thanks again.